Board member is our paid maintenance man, posted by Gloomy War 4362. So the person that does our maintenance and manages all our contracts for repairs is also a paid member on our HOA board in Florida. Is this allowed? He also selectively assists other people that live here to collaboratively negotiate for things such as new roofs so they can all get a better deal, but excludes me. I'm aware of group emails that he sent out to the community offering these group discounts. Bad blood developed when I was moving into the community and everyone told me this individual is a contractor and could help me renovate my property. I asked him if he would do the work and he said he was too busy, but he could recommend someone that turned out to be his brother-in-law. I was unaware of this relationship, and it turns out that the maintenance man was going to obtain the subs and, I assume, take his cut. I fired his brother-in-law when he stopped making progress on the renovation and started price gouging me beyond the 15% of cost. The maintenance man board member started harassing people that were working on my property and telling them that I was crazy and that this was supposed to be his job. He managed to sabotage some of the workers. He caused people to walk off the job. I would try to find subs to work on the property, and they would say that if this particular person was working here, they would not come to the property. Apparently, he has a reputation of being very territorial and giving anyone a hard time that comes to do work in the neighborhood if he has not arranged it. He also makes himself available for hire to the people that he likes. It makes it difficult for me to get repairs done on my property. Is it legal for him to be a paid maintenance man here if he's on the board? In the past, he has acted as president of the board. I don't know what role he currently is in, but he stepped down from president and got his puppet friend elected. I'm the only owner in a section of units which is not maintained, as is the areas where board members reside. The hedges are dead, which allows road noise and lack of privacy. The rest of the property has 15-foot hedges. There's a sunken area in the asphalt parking lot behind my car. The entire lot was resurfaced. They were supposed to fill on the hole, which is so bad that they had evaluated by an engineer to determine if it's a sinkhole. I was told the work was to include this sunken area as it puts my 4-pod building, and particularly my unit, at risk for flooding. This community is on a barrier island oceanside. The water from the sunken area splashes on my car when traffic goes through it, as residents pass by frequently since I'm near the community entrance. This has damaged the paint on my car. I've been telling them about it for a year with no response. We have assigned parking, and I've asked for permission to park in an alternate space. After the repairs, I emailed the board with photos showing the ponding was not repaired and was worse. I also noticed a much smaller area of standing water in another area. Somehow, the HOA president thought he was emailing the paving company, which he admitted to me in an email, and told them only to repair the smaller area behind another building. When I replied and said, "Hey, what about the larger area of standing water?" he told them not to fix it. Again, he did not realize he was communicating with me. I called the paving company and they said the HOA board had to request the repair behind my building. I emailed them and I informed them of my concerns, the conversation, and the need for them to make the repair request. The paving company also said there must have been a miscommunication because they were not to fill the hole as there is no place for the water. They said that when the job was discussed with the board member maintenance man, the suggestion was made to level the area, which would allow it to disperse across the blacktop and evaporate more quickly. The maintenance man did not agree, so it was not done this way. Our HOA fees are being doubled to help pay for this major project. I feel that I'm not being treated like the other people that live here because of what happened with the contractor and his relationship to the board member. My property is being devalued due to flooding in the parking lot immediately behind my unit and the lack of privacy and hedge coverage on the front of the unit. On each entrance of the property, there are beautiful palm trees that all had lights shining up into the trees that were turned on at night. They helped with deterring crime and was also beautiful. All of the lights by my building are broken and smashed into the ground. I have sent several emails to the board over the last year requesting that the lights be repaired. No response. Only response I have ever gotten from the board was when they accidentally sent the message to me that they thought was going to the paving company by their own admission. The property manager does respond, but it's snarky and not reliable. There is one absentee owner that is somewhat helpful, and he sent the property manager an email about the hedge, and she told him it had all been replanted and resolved. She knew that was not the case. Do I have any recourse other than sell or try to not let it bother me? I can't get support from owners as most here rent, and he has badmouthed me to everyone, including my teenage daughter when he cornered her at the trash cans. It seems that homeowners associations have a lot of power, and a common answer is either hire an attorney if you have grounds and spend a lot of money, or get yourself elected to the board. Is this my only recourse to shut up and put up with this? I am getting up in age, 60 plus, so I must have even the most minor work hired out, which is difficult in this situation. Decades ago, someone set this property up so that the outside building maintenance is all our responsibility, and I believe we also own the property lines in front and back to the easement of the highway and the neighborhood behind. They cover the grounds maintenance outside of our individual courtyards. I'm told by the county that this is a very unique setup. I live alone, and I'm afraid of him. He won't do any work for me, and he won't even talk to me. My issue is that he tries to run off anybody that I hire, even after I've produced their credentials to the property manager, including proposal, getting the work approved, and submitting their insurance information. He also does all the contracts for maintenance with outside providers on the property and has them do shoddy work around my property. He's very vindictive. Commenter says, sounds like you need to run for the board. We had to take ours back from retirees. A few of them were making the HOA their life. The one guy, probably like the one you're dealing with, was always somewhere doing something. Relevant or not, little value added, just doing something. Oddly, we had a case of not raising HOA fees to match inflation. With fixed income retirees running the show, everything was going shoddy. The lawn service was killing our lawns, sprinkler systems, gate system just not working and not getting updated. Responses of, but we're just volunteers, was endless. Anyhow, yeah, want change? Run for the board, get your neighbors to pay attention for a second, maybe get a couple more to run, and take your HOA back. It's a multi-year process, but we own ours now. HOA levies fines even though I'm not part of the HOA, with updates. My parents had an existing fence on their property that was falling apart. They tore the old fence and built a new one without a building permit. A couple of months later, they receive a notice from the HOA stating that they are in violation of the governing document because they had the fencing installed without filing a building permit with the Osceola County or notifying the Architectural Control Committee as per the deed restrictions requirement. My parents are not part of the HOA. The notice also includes the following statement. Additionally, our records indicate that you are not a member of the Homeowners Association. We highly suggest that you complete the enclosed application and submit this with the annual dues of this amount. They were invited to attend an HOA meeting to contest these fines. However, they were unable to attend due to an emergency. Since they did not attend the meeting, the HOA levied a $1,500 fine and planned to file a property lien against their home. My parents tried to get more information, but the number provided does not return their calls. At the moment, I'm trying to pull deed records from the county to determine if there are any deed restrictions. I plan to help the folks to contact the HOA representatives if they do another meeting regarding the fine. So can the HOA impose fines if my parents are not part of the HOA, or is it dependent on what the deed restriction says? It just appears counterintuitive to not be part of the HOA, yet they still have to receive approval for a fence regardless of deed restrictions. We're hoping to remove the fine. So I've received some clarifying information from the folks. The HOA has yet to put a lien on the property and they only threatened it. Update time. I found the deed. However, it is one page. I'm not sure if this is typical for HUD purchase property. There is some language that concerns me regarding restrictions, which I comment below. I found the record plat and saw no mention of an HOA. Nonetheless, I told my parents to call the title company for more details. Unfortunately, I found the restrictions document and covenant titled Restrictions on Real Estate for this subdivision, and my parents' lot and record plat. I found the documents on the county recording website, and it says, "No building shall be erected, placed, or altered on any lot until the construction plans and specifications and a plan showing the location of the structure have been approved by the Architectural Control Committee as to the quality of workmanship and materials, harmony of external design with existing structures, and as to location with respect to topography and finished grade elevation." So what would you do in these shoes? Is this fair? Let me know. HOA wanted me to replace a dead tree. My wife and I purchased a house in a neighborhood that had mostly retired families. There were several other families in the area that had kids, but for the most part, it was older folks. We bought our house the day before Thanksgiving and moved in overnight and into the morning. The following Monday, I received a letter from the HOA that I had a dead tree in my front yard and I needed to have it replaced. There was a rule that we needed to have 2 trees, one in the back and one in the front yard. So I contacted them and I said, hey, there was no way I was going to plant a brand new tree that would die immediately and that the ground was too hard. We live in northern Colorado. I told them that I would replace it the following spring, and they agreed that that would be okay. The following spring, on the official first day, they sent me another letter saying that I needed to replace the tree. I again told them that the ground was too cold and hard to replace a tree, and I didn't want to spend money on a tree that would immediately die. After several exchanges and a phone call to a local nursery, they agreed that I could wait a little longer. Now driving into the neighborhood, there is a division between entering and exiting the neighborhood. This is the HOA property, and they had a good-sized tree there. The tree had died and was in view of the main road and everyone entering into the neighborhood. I finally got a fine in the mail about my dead tree. I refused to pay that fine, and I told them when they got rid of their dead tree, I would remove mine. They pushed back and said that, as a homeowner, they could fine me, and I needed to follow the community guidelines. I continued to refuse to pay the fine and had a friend who was a lawyer contact them. They agreed to remove the fines and still said that I needed to follow the guidelines. After a few weeks, when I was driving into the neighborhood, I saw their tree had been cut down. When I got home, I got my axe and I chopped down my dead tree. I replaced the tree soon after. After this whole incident, someone from the HOA would walk by my house and measure my grass and would constantly harass me. This was one of these several issues that I had with that HOA. Luckily, with a new kiddo on the way, we moved to another town into a larger house. I had a coworker who lived a few houses down from me, and she said that they started harassing her too about her grass being too long. She worked nights at a hospital and would sleep during the day. She moved out of the neighborhood shortly after I did as well. This commenter said they would have cut down the dead tree, used it for firewood in the winter, and then got a fake tree off Amazon and planted it. Oh, it says here, our rules about trees never mention if they have to be real or not. Would have you done that too? Let me know. This story has an update. Current HOA voted out, but not leaving. Advice on how to proceed. Posted by JNash85. OP gets us up to speed by saying, the quick update is that the HOA is trying to do a special assessment for a roof replacement, which would cost around $4,000 for each owner. A special meeting was held by the homeowners to vote to remove the 2 board members and fire the management company. We need 63 votes to pass, and we only had around 40 people show up. So nothing happened. However, it seems that in the bylaws it is written that since we did not have enough people show up to vote for a majority, we can meet again and only need around half the original number. So that meeting was held Saturday, and everyone in attendance, 44 people, voted to remove the members. There was a notice on my door Saturday evening stating the outcome and telling us that the current board members and management company would receive a letter by certified mail on Monday that their services were no longer needed. They also stated we have a new board, presumably voted in at the meeting on Saturday, and we will be self-managed. There was another notice on my door today, this time from the current management company and current board members. It stated that they are still having a meeting to vote on the roof assessment tomorrow, that we have a contract with the management company and they have serious concerns about the 2 meetings that were held to vote them out. My question is, what do I do here? I was present at the first meeting to vote them out, but could not make it to the second one. However, I did vote ahead of time to remove the members and the management company. I am inclined to go to the other meeting tomorrow, but I asked the person who has been leading this cause and they said that they are advising everyone not to go, so that they cannot get the votes for the roof assessment. Personally, I think everyone should show up, confront the management company, and vote any special assessment down. As far as I know, everything has been done by the books, but I do not want to get in a situation where the management company says I owe them dues and the new HOA says no, you don't, you need to pay us. I was on the fence about how I would vote during the first meeting, but the guy from the management company showed up, caused a scene, and had to be removed. That told me everything I needed to know about him. Update. First off, thanks for all the replies. I am not going to update so much on the roof, as this is now about having 2 HOA boards fighting it out. For the record, I do think the roofs should be replaced. Well, it seems I was in the wrong side of this one. I attended the meeting with the current board and the management company tonight. There were about 35 people there out of 100 units. I only spotted 4 or 5 that were at the special meeting to vote these people out. The management company presented parts of the bylaws and enough proof that I feel the special meeting was not valid and this new board should not be recognized. Additionally, the new board posted a notice on everyone's doors instructing them where to pay their new dues. Personally, I will not be doing that. I will continue to pay the management company my dues. If this goes to court, they can decide. Also, the 2 board members that were there made the case that the members of this new board were free to run to be on the legit board. In fact, they were begging people to join. Popcorn, you're going to need lots of popcorn. This is going to be fun to watch, commenter says, and OP replies, good point. On one hand, this is pure entertainment for me, but I don't want to mess with 2 groups asking for HOA dues. Weird interaction with a weasel of a neighbor, posted by These Ask Eddie 04. I'm in an HOA in Northern California. I'm renting my house, and in the last year, I've gotten 4 notices from my landlord that there have been complaints sent in about our front yard. 2 were related to our lawn being too long. One was about a hedge that was overgrown, also not my hedge but my neighbor, and one for my trash can not being behind our fence. All stupid. Luckily, my landlord is really understanding and patient, and I was able to explain everything. We had a 4th kid right after moving in, and it was during the crazy rains that we had in California, so it goes without saying, I was a bit preoccupied during any time that I wasn't working, and really wasn't caring to mow my lawn in a downpour. The other lawn problem, it was dumb, because the photo submitted was taken literally the day after I mowed the lawn. Like, the person taking the photos were so bent on getting me, they tried to retroactively submit a complaint. One thing I noticed was that the photos were taken from the exact same angle. I have my main lawn in front of the left side of my house, and then the driveway, and then a small strip of side yard grass to the right. The kicker is, the photo locations only showed my side yard, when the main yard would have looked much worse, probably even complaint-worthy. But nonetheless, I got the feeling that whoever took the photos lived to the right of me somewhere and didn't want to risk being seen from my window had he taken the photo dead on. So, one Saturday morning, I was coming out to mow my lawn, and I see the weasel getting ready to take another photo. He had his dang iPad up and everything. So I just said, "Hey, good morning, can I help you?" The guy, an older gentleman, maybe in his 70s, I'm a terrible judge of age, he just panics and he tucks his iPad under his arm and he starts scuffling down the sidewalk. I thought, oh heck no, face me you jerk. So I just followed him, at a distance like at least 50 feet back, and I asked him if there was an issue, why are you photographing my house, and so on. I knew why, obviously. Well, he gets about 4 houses down, and he quickly goes in his garage and frantically shuts it while looking back at me. I am not an imposing figure. I'm actually a really nice guy. I smile and I say hello to everyone that I pass. I don't raise my voice. So his sheer terror of my presence was actually funny, but not necessary. I just wanted to ask him just to let me know when he thinks I'm out of regs rather than continue reporting me. I've never met this guy. I don't know what his issue is with me. I just must have a target on my back now. At least my landlord gets it. Commenter says, stand in front of his house and take pictures, and OP replies, I like that, though I'm sure I'll have another notice sent for being a nuisance or something, or the police called. And we get some answers here. Sounds like he's targeting you for being renters. He had to travel down 4 houses to photograph your yard, and he panicked when caught. Of course he could just be a busybody. Definitely ask the other neighbors about him. And OP says, very possible. I know that one neighbor across the street, who works out of town 5 days a week, got dinged for his lawn once, but he's been here for 3 or 4 years, so that's a pretty good record. Other neighbors haven't received anything that I know of, and I asked. I really don't have any quarrel. If he's just some old busybody, I should still be keeping my lawn nice, and life has gotten a bit less hectic than it was back then. I'm just the kind that likes to have a face-to-face conversation and close things out, you know? If there's an issue or I'm a concern, just tell me. I'll be sure to do the same. And OP answers about why you can complain about a lawn being long like that. He says, I wish I could answer that. The first time, yeah, it was a bit unruly. The second time, it wasn't even that bad before I mowed it. Like 2 weeks from the last mow, and it's summer in Northern California, the lawn isn't growing fast. It's ridiculous. HOA said, too bad, we're out of luck, posted by Miss Contrary Mary. My husband and I own a condo in Georgia. All the windows in our unit face the pool. About 3 weeks ago, bright stadium-style floodlights were installed in our pool area. The first night, these were on all night. It was so bright, it basically looked like mid-afternoon inside our condo, even with our shades down. This was the entire night in all of our unit because every room has a window. My poor husband couldn't sleep at all. We reached out to the board and we let them know. We agreed to the lights being on until 10 p.m. when the pool area closes, until a more permanent and reasonable solution could be found. Last night, the lights were on until midnight. We reached back out, asking about it. Apparently, in the board meeting that was held yesterday, they decided, for safety reasons, they need the lights on and suggested that we get blackout curtains. Now, we received an email that there was a meeting, but there was nothing mentioning that lights would be discussed or voted on. Had that been the case, we would have rescheduled our previous engagement to attend said meeting. They just simply told us the association has an obligation to ensure that the community remains well lit and safe for all residents to enjoy. I'm hoping to get some advice or input regarding what we can do. We don't think it's fair to have to foot the bill for installing and maintaining curtains. More importantly, we think it's unfair that they're just saying tough luck, deal with it. I mean, their actions are directly affecting our life inside our own unit. Any and all advice will be greatly appreciated. Update: the managing company actually asked to meet with us today, and they let us know that, unfortunately, they couldn't just turn off the one particular light outside our windows, because if they shut one light off, they all shut off, and this makes people complain because they can't see when they're walking their dogs at 2 a.m. They again touched on blackout curtains, and we told them that we are definitely open to the idea, but because it's something being forced on us, the HOA would have to cover the cost of installing and maintenance. There was a bit of back and forth, and we mentioned a few things that people here mentioned, and after a few calls, they agreed that they would order and install timers. The timers would be set so that the light affecting us would turn off at 10 p.m. and maintain the others on. The timer should be here next week, and meanwhile, we agreed to the lights being on every other day until they get installed, but we did make it clear if it's going to go beyond next week, we expect the lights to be off until they arrive and are installed. Like I said, I really appreciate everybody's advice. This is my first time dealing with an HOA, and it's given me valuable information if I need it in the future. This great comment says, find all of the condo owners that face the pool and show up en masse to the HOA meeting. I've actually dealt with the situation of huge floodlights being on outside of your window with loud machinery at night hours. It's really infuriating, so I understand, OP, what you're going through, and I'm glad that you're finally getting a resolution. Seriously, it sucks. Wouldn't you agree? HOA filed a lien on our home, even though we've been paying them monthly since we bought the place. My wife and I are facing a bit of a strange quandary. and we would love any feedback you may have regarding an issue with our HOA. We're located in northern Utah. To put it simply, we received a notice of our HOA filing a lien against us and our house for overdue payments, threatening to foreclose on our home if we don't pay them 2.5 years worth of back pay from when we first bought our place. The thing is, we've been paying the HOA monthly since we've moved here. They've sent us a bill for $96 every month, and we're always prompt with our payments. And then, out of nowhere, we got this notice yesterday saying that we owe them an additional $600 plus $350 for legal fees. So I called the legal team that they're using, and I found out that apparently we're supposed to be paying 2 HOAs. The one we've been paying regularly is the smaller, more local HOA, and there's a larger master HOA that also expects payment from us, roughly $19 or $20 per month. Except we've never heard of this parent company. They've never contacted us once, let alone to send a bill of any kind. All HOA contact that we've ever had was with the smaller local company that we're familiar with. So this lien and legal notice is literally the first we have ever heard of these people or any financial responsibility that we have to them. As far as we've been aware, for the last 2+ years, we were completely square on our homeowner fees. We were worried it might be a scam, so we checked with our neighbors and they confirmed it. There is definitely a second HOA. Not only that, they went through a nearly identical situation, minus the lien, a few months back, and implied that several others in our neighborhood have had to deal with this very thing. My question is, do we have any legal basis to push back on this? Obviously, we are happy to pay any bills moving forward, provided they actually ever send us a bill for once. But we are in no position to suddenly cough up $600 back pay for a fee that we didn't even know existed 2 days ago. At the very least, even if they force us to pay the $600, I would hope that we can convince them to cover their own legal fees. After all, if they had ever sent us correspondence of any kind, a letter, an email, a phone call, anything to let us know that they existed and expected payment, they never would have needed to get a lawyer involved in the first place. I'm in the process of creating a written statement contesting the fees and don't want to be so bold that I shoot myself in the foot. But the whole thing seems genuinely preposterous to me. We always try to stay on top of our bills, and since we didn't know this second HOA even existed, I honestly don't know what we could have done differently to avoid this situation. Do you agree with this? To grab all the CC&R documents from when you bought the house, get a real estate lawyer, and have them review it to see if they have any other questions on that, and then they say it's a common ploy to jack up cost. And then this commenter wonders if there's a second HOA parent, they'd be interested to know if they're run by the same company as the child one that they've been paying. What would you do? This sounds very strange. Let me know. We are screwed, posted by Cunning Logic. I made the mistake of buying into a small rural equestrian HOA because it didn't act like an HOA. Overall, as a non-board member, it was great. I paid $300 a year, the grass around the road was mowed along an area that would tear up my nice fancy mower if I did it, and I managed to utilize the HOA to get an over $100,000 discount on running fiber internet out this far. They wanted $120,000 to run fiber to a single house, but offered to run it to an HOA for $50,000 split among everyone who wanted it. I needed it for work and had accepted that $120,000 cost as part of the price of buying the house. I got fiber to my house for something like $4,200, saving almost $116,000. This discount also landed me the love of my neighbors, as we were end of the line for ADSL, meaning sub-2 MIPS speeds and connections that drop 50+ times a day. We now have unmetered gig up and gig down, and it's great. Then, I joined the board as the treasurer. Frankly, I wanted to ensure money wasn't wasted and that the association remains low conflict. An emergency repair situation led me to auditing the association's records, as I was suspect of spending association-wide funds on repairing a limited common property. I was right, and I found other things. So first off, we had never filed taxes in over 25 years. we had no valid registered agent, so if we got sued, we wouldn't know, and we'd likely get a default judgment. The addresses for our associations registered with the state were invalid, so we would easily be forced into court-supervised receivership, and some of our records were intentionally destroyed years ago by a past board member who has since moved, making a complete audit impossible and completely filling all of the missing tax returns impossible. And for 25 years, we've been using an invalid EIN. Our bank won't even let me correct this. We have no reserve or emergency fund, and our basic essential costs are more than we bring in. We've never raised dues, only lowered them in 25 years. And the board has no means to raise the dues enough to cover our yearly minimal expenses. We're underinsured by a lot, and the state of our infrastructure of a subset of owners makes seeking more insurance risky. The grammar and wording of our covenants is bad. They essentially require me to have a horse when they intend to allow me to have 4. They grant me permission to have a tiger or anything when they intend to disallow it. As someone who used to keep venomous snakes for fun, it is tempting. Based on the published case law and the general court attitude in my state, the intent of the covenants is meaningless, and it's the written word that matters. Some members have deeds without the covenant restrictions on them, and I've found 25 years of financial misappropriation. We even have 15 grand in our association and are facing the immediate need of $300,000 to $800,000 in infrastructure repairs in the very near future. That can only be spent from funds from a subset of members, not me, thankfully. And we have a buttload of other concerns, some likely illegal, that I haven't had time to research yet. Eventually, a member is going to sue the ever-loving heck out of the HOA and edit to prevent misappropriation of funds or covenant-violating assessments that will be attempted. I guess I wasn't clear the type of lawsuit I expect to see, and I'll probably join them when that happens. I could and might write a book on how to audit an HOA once this is sorted, or I quit. As a commenter said, the blind leading the blind. Holy cow, this is a wild situation. Are you ready for some HOA justice with an update at the end? This one's called Fool Me Once, Shame on You. Fool Me Twice, I'll Bury You, posted by Welcome to My Mind. This is primarily sweet revenge, but it was achieved by maliciously complying. Background. I work for a very large roofing company, and in this particular region, there are only 3 companies that are considered when it comes to larger commercial projects. So that's like apartment complexes, condos, and so on. And my company is one of them. We all had worked the region as friendly competitors so much so that up to this point, if one of us landed a large deal but didn't have the time to complete it, we would hand it off to one of the other 2 in good faith. We'd be paid a finder's fee based off of the cost of the total job, and the cycle would continue. That is, until the following incident went down. 2 years ago, I got a contract for a commercial metal building but did not have the crews to spare for this project. So I called the owner of one of the other 2 companies, let's call him Mr. D for D-Bag, that I previously mentioned could handle this, and I referred him the deal, which he graciously accepted. My finder's fee here would have been about 40 grand. A pretty hefty chunk of change, but he probably made 5 times that in profit. He never paid me this. I tried calling him dozens of times to get paid, but he was now dodging me. Eventually, my number and email were blocked from calling his phone, office, and both work and personal emails. Okay, if that's how you want to be, 2 can play at this game. Fast forward a couple months, and there was a massive storm that damaged a huge condo complex. I'm talking several hundred units. At this particular complex, the HOA board made the decision on what company would be selected to do the work. I knew several members and they knew of my work, so I was called in to assist with the adjustment from the insurance company and make sure that they were taken care of under the assumption that I would get the contract for this deal. I met the adjuster on site who knew me and my company very well, as we had been working the same market for nearly a decade at this point. He and I tag-teamed the adjustment to speed it along, and he also used my knowledge to help him understand what all needed to be covered. He primarily did flood damage claims, so he wasn't the most knowledgeable about roofing. Thus, he deferred to me for my expertise quite often when it came to these claims, especially pricing. This comes into play later. We finished the adjustment after 2 full days on site, and the adjuster heads off to go to work on the estimate, which he will have in about a week. At this time, Mr. D from the previously mentioned company finds out about this property and tries to finagle his way into getting the contract. Turns out he knew the president of the HOA through some mutual friends. Mr. D bribed the president with a cruise to the Caribbean and a free new roof on his son's home to try and get the deal. Now, the entire board, aside from the president, was backing me at this point, and he wanted me to do the work, but the dude just wasn't having it. I was forwarded an internal email chain from one of the friendly board members where Mr. President flat out replied, "I don't give a crap. I will not let OP do our roofs." At this point, the other board members could easily just outvote him and give the job to me, and he knows this and tells Mr. D. So, what does Mr. D do in all of his infinite wisdom? Well, Turbo Nuts decided to buy all the material needed for the project, has it delivered, and has a crew start tearing off our roof without a signed contract. He did this knowing it would force the board's hand and they'd have to use him, solidifying him as the contractor. Okay, so I lost the deal, but where does my revenge and deliciously evil compliance come in, you ask? Well, remember when I said we were all waiting for the adjuster to write the estimate? We were about to get it. Now, anyone who has ever dealt with an insurance claim knows the insurance company always underpays the first time around. It's just how it is. You then deny acceptance of their price, send in your estimate, and negotiate. That is, unless you agree to their estimate up front. So, the day before Mr. D pulls his stunt, I get an email from the adjuster who is completely unaware of what is transpiring with his first draft of the estimate. As per usual, he sends it asking me to review it and to see if the pricing is right. Oh boy, was it not! This project should have cost anywhere between $500,000 to $600,000, and his estimate was for $240,000. Fun fact, if a capable contractor and the customer agree to an insurance estimate, it makes it nearly impossible to ask for more money down the road since the customer and person able to do the work agreed to the original price. I think you already know where this is going. I replied back, "Yeah, looks good. Cut that check and send it to the HOA." So I went to the HOA the following day and I gave them the insurance estimate. I told them they just had to call the adjuster and confirm that they also approved it, and they did exactly that. I wished them the best of luck and to give this to Mr. D as he will need to get that contract finally signed for that price. I didn't put up a fight. I didn't argue or try to get the deal back. I simply went in knowing that I was no longer getting the deal and would have to accept that. Poof! I disappeared into the wind to let my plan play itself out. I found out a few months later from my friends on that board that Mr. D went absolutely ape crap when they gave him the agreed upon price. He tried calling the adjuster and getting a new price set, but the adjuster just replied that if he couldn't do it for that price, I was more than able to. He knew that he was screwed because he'd already committed himself to re-roofing that entire complex no matter what. He lost about $100,000 on that project based on my calculations. On top of that, he tried to cut every corner imaginable to get his costs down and ended up doing an absolutely terrible job. So terrible that the HOA is now suing him for not standing behind his work as numerous leaks have sprung up, and some of the work is so shoddy it can be seen from the street, and he is refusing to pay for it or come back and correct anything. He would have been better off to just do the project properly, eat the loss, which his company was large enough that he could eat it and not go under, and walk away, tail between his legs. He is not smart enough to come to this conclusion, as I found out. You try to be stingy and to bite my hand that fed you, then you come back for seconds, I'll bury you. Occasionally, I do feel bad knowing that his company couldn't even get a contract for a chicken coop at this point. But then I remember that he purposefully went out of his way to try and screw me and try to destroy any and all mutual respect that we had for one another. He made his bed, now he gets to lie in it. Update: Mr. President ended up not getting his promised Caribbean vacation or free roof, FYI. Mr. D reneged on that pretty fast. I also later found out that one of the workers slipped and fell into the attic and went through the ceiling of Mr. President's unit. He was fine, by the way. Think Tom Hanks in the Money Pit when he falls through the floor. I got a good chuckle out of that one. Did you ever get your 40,000? Oh heck no, and I never will more than likely, but I've made it back in other ways since this. Because since he has destroyed his reputation, myself and company number 3 are doing all the large projects in the area. All this work split 2 ways is better than 3 ways. Myself and company 3 definitely got overloaded for a bit there, but we both managed and actually both grew in size and profits at an outrageous scale afterwards. So yeah, it all worked out. And we're on great terms because now we're the only 2 left who get these big jobs. The large loss world, property management, HOAs, and private owners, is a small one, so word traveled fast. Now they did ask me to fix the mistakes that Mr. D made. I steered them towards a crew that could do it far cheaper than I could, being the middleman and all, and how to get those costs reimbursed by Mr. D. The repairs were made and the costs were reimbursed. A neighbor hit my car and lied about it, so I ruined 300 pounds of meat while he was on vacation, posted by LIEN. This happened about 5 or 6 years ago. For some context, my neighbor, we'll call him Chester, is your stereotypical weekend outdoorsman type. He owns at least 10 different baseball caps and they all have camo on them. He's one of those. He drives a Jeep, which will be important later, and usually spends his weekends either hunting, fishing, or prepping for when the bombs drop. I tried to explain to him once that we were within the fallout range of a major city, so if it got hit, we'd be screwed either way, but whatever. Everyone needs a hobby, and some people's is collecting canned peaches. 2 weeks before the revenge, I came outside to see my car had a broken window on the passenger side, and that part of the frame was dented just above the door handle. I can tell immediately from the size and the shape of the dent exactly what it was from. As I said, my neighbor, Chester, drives a Jeep, and mounted on his front grille is a cable winch that he uses for pulling stumps and whatnot. It juts out almost 1.5 feet in front of the bumper and is made of solid metal. Anyone with a picture of the winch and the shape of the dent in my car could CSI that crap just from eyeballing it. The dent is almost identically shaped and situated at the same height the winch was mounted. On top of that, Chester lives directly across the street from me, and he likes to back into his driveway. Conveniently enough, my car is always parked on the street, so he has ample opportunities to hit it. I asked Chester about it, and without saying anything, he shook his head while biting his lip like some clueless cartoon character. I then asked if anyone who borrowed his car might have done it, because the winch itself was pretty scratched up, almost like he's been ramming it into things all over town. Again, Chester silently shakes his head and then tries to tell me it was probably teenagers. No exposition, mind you, he just blamed it on the teenagers. I was fuming, but I kept my composure and went home to call the police and my insurance company to report it. I managed to get a competent police officer who told me point blank that it was clear what happened, but without a witness, it would be pointless to try and prove it. The insurance agent was equally certain of Chester's guilt, but ended up recommending that I pay out of pocket for the repair. Since I was parking on the street, it was a factor the insurance company might use against me if I filed the claim. When it came time for them to recalculate and adjust my monthly rate, I could see a significant increase. A few hundred out of pocket right now could save me several hundred a year going forward if my rate was increased due to my own negligence, which is what the claim would, unfortunately, be categorized as. Raw deal for sure, but at least he was honest with me. Fast forward to 2 weeks later, Chester and his family are going up north to rough it in nature for a week, and despite my cold attitude towards him in recent days, he asked me to keep an eye on his house while he's gone, since I'm the only person in the neighborhood that he trusts apparently. I agreed to do it, not because I had any type of revenge in mind, but because he gifted me a large case of beer for my service. His one request was that I call him if we have any extreme weather, because he'd need me to check up on something. 2 nights after he left, we had a nasty storm. Wind and hail and even a few rolling blackouts. The next morning I called Chester to ask what he needed me to check on, but he didn't answer. Knowing Chester, he'd probably set up camp in some rural part of America with no dang cell phone service, even though he asked me to call him if this happened. After a few failed attempts, I went over to his house to inspect for any potential issues that might have arisen from the weather. I figured he was probably worried about his garage flooding, since his yard was frequently a moat after heavy rain. I went into the garage and there was no flooding, but something caught my eye immediately. 4 large freezer chests lined up side by side, taking a huge chunk of the wall up. I peeked inside one and I immediately realized what Chester was worried about. All 4 of them were packed from floor to lid with meat. Some of it was still in packages from the grocery store, and some of it was wrapped in butcher paper, likely game picked up from Chester's hunting exploits. But on top of one of the freezers was something else that seemed out of place. It was a red Solo cup full of frozen water with a penny sitting on top. I thought that was weird and dismissed it immediately, but curiosity got the better of me later that day when I got home. I decided to Google it, and what I learned instantly clicked as a way to get the ultimate revenge on Chester for hitting my car and sticking me with the repair bill. There's an old life hack that people used to use when they went on vacation. You freeze a cup of water and then place a penny on top of it and stick it in your freezer. If your power goes out, the water will eventually melt and the penny will fall to the bottom of your cup. If you return home and the penny is at the bottom of the cup, your freezer was off for an extended period of time, and now everything in it has potentially defrosted and become unfit for consumption. I immediately got up and ran back to Chester's garage to scope out the legitimacy of my nefarious deed. As luck would have it, Chester's circuit breaker was hidden behind a tool shelf, not directly visible to the naked eye. Who would put a shelf in front of a circuit breaker? Chester, of course. So I promptly took the cup out of the freezer and sat it on Chester's porch to let it get a little sun. After a few hours, the ice had melted enough that the penny slipped right to the bottom of the cup. I then put the cup back in the freezer, being very careful to position it exactly where it was when I took it out, before moving on to the last phase of my insidious plan. I started blowing up Chester's phone with calls and frantic text messages. "Chester, where's your circuit breaker? I can't find it and your power is off. Get back to me ASAP." I did this countless times over the next 2 days before I finally got a call back from Chester. He told me immediately where to go in his garage to find the circuit breaker, which, of course, I already knew thanks to my prior detective work. I sat the phone down and flipped the circuit breaker twice. Once to turn it off, and then a second time to turn it back on, giving it just enough time to mess with the digital clocks on all his appliances. And with that, my revenge was complete. All that was left was for Chester to come back home, which took another 2 days. When Chester got back home, I was nervous, but eager to see if my charade had worked. The next day, I got a knock on my door. It was Chester. He asked me if I wanted some meat to give to my dogs. Apparently, the power had been off for too long, and all the meat in his freezers had thawed out while he was gone, so he was throwing it out. I asked him how much he had, and he said it was probably somewhere close to 300 pounds. He didn't want to waste it all, so he asked if I wanted to give some to my dogs. I graciously helped myself to roughly half a freezer's worth of meat, some of which I stored in my own fridge, and the rest Chester was nice enough to offer to hold on to in his freezer until I needed it. The kicker is that Chester had no idea the meat actually never defrosted and was still perfectly good. That night, I helped myself and my dogs to a couple of nice steaks, courtesy of old Chester himself, who was still busy walking the neighborhood unloading the tainted meat on anyone who had a cat or dog that might want it. It was at least 4 or 5 months before me and my dogs went through all the meat that Chester had given us. I don't know if I made all my money back for the repairs on my car, but I didn't have to buy any meat for many a fortnight. He literally probably cost Chester over $1,000 of damage. I mean, 300 pounds of meat, that's a lot of a cow right there. What do you think? New neighbor walks into our house because she knew the previous owner. Posted by Feman26, Iron Man. The cast is me, fiance, my dad, and the entitled neighbor. So this happened 2 years ago when my fiance and I bought our townhouse. Here's some backstory. We found a townhouse for sale in a complex. It was in our price range, but it needed some work, mainly the basement. On the disclosure, the previous owner stated that the basement had flooded a few years previously. However, the basement was carpeted and it had never been replaced or cleaned, so it smelled mildewy. The way the house is set up, there are 2 entrances, the front door and a door in the basement, both with doorbells. The basement was in 2 sections, an office and a playroom with the outside door. Now this is relevant for later. Okay, back to the story. I took a week off work and my fiance was only able to take 2 days off so that we could start cleaning and prepping our new house. First full day, we had cut the basement carpet out and started scraping the glue off the floor. When my fiance was back at work, I was there alone cleaning. My father is a bit of a handyman and he was really excited about us getting a house, so he was going to come down and help us. I was in the basement sweeping and cleaning, and because of the amount of dust, I left the door to the outside open and then went into the office to start cleaning in there, and that's when my father calls. Here's how I remembered the conversation going. "Hi, Dad." "Hey, kiddo, how's the new place?" "I need some work." "I am about to leave here. Do you need me to bring any tools down?" I turned to leave the office. "Oh no, I don't think so. Oh my goodness, who are you?" There, in the middle of the other section of the basement, was a strange woman, just standing there looking slightly disgusted by the mess. I nearly dropped my phone from the shock of a random person in our house. "Hi, I'm the entitled neighbor. I live in the unit over there." Me, still in shock and extremely confused. What are you doing here?" Karen replies, "I know the previous owner." What?" "You know you shouldn't leave this door open. Squirrels can get in." She then walks out the door, closing it behind her. I'm still in shock and I'm looking like a trout with my mouth open. I snap out of it when I hear my dad still on the phone. "Hello, is everything okay?" "I think I just met our neighbor." My fiance and I had a good laugh about it later. Now here's some more backstory about the previous owner and the people in the complex. So there were 3 units for sale and we picked the one that was in our price range and we liked the size too. One of the other units was Squirrel Lady's, and from what I was told by the HOA, she has since retired and moved to Florida. The other couple that was selling their unit was very nice and they've also moved. But before they left, they told us the previous owner was not well liked and was a total Karen. Her only friend was Squirrel Lady and they had both been living here for over 15 years. Nah, I don't think the previous owner moved because people didn't like her. She was at least 80 when we met, and the townhouse has 2 flights of stairs. Her being fed up with the place is probably why she shouted, "I'm done," and ran out. And strangely enough, Squirrel Lady was right. We did end up having problems with squirrels. We even got a flying squirrel in our house once, but that's another story. Terrible Karen neighbor story time, and guess what? They live in an HOA. It's called Fool Me Twice, Screw You, posted by PLang67. About a month ago, my neighbor, who I have always gotten along with and am now friendly with, despite her entitled behavior, told me that she wants to add purple streaks to her hair. She asked my opinion because I'm a licensed cosmetologist, but no longer work in the field due to health reasons. My neighbor has money, and her financial situation is very comfortable, and she can easily go to a salon to get her hair done. But because she is high risk and refuses to get vaccinated, they want to put a tracking chip in her, she's not kidding, she won't go to a salon. I explained the process of adding purple streaks to her hair is labor intensive and requires that she bleach her hair first to a light yellow and then tone with a light purple color. 2 months ago, she dyed her hair black with box color. Box color is the crap that you can buy retail and not professional hair color. It's crap because they will add things like metallic dyes to the color, and bleaching may literally make your hair melt off your head. Bleaching after using box color ends with questionable results, but she did not listen to me. I told her to buy a California cap, which is a rubber cap, and pull the hair through that she wants to bleach, what bleach to buy, which volume developer, and how to pick her purple color and developer for the toner. I also told her there was no way I could do her hair. I can't stand up long due to my condition to help her. I stressed this several times. Instead, I helped her write down everything, and she seemed okay with it, and said her friend was going to help her. I wished her good luck and promptly forgot all about it. I forgot until the Memorial Day weekend when she called me in a panic, screaming her hair was all messed up, and I had to come help her. I hobbled my way to her place, and when I get there, I see a plastic highlighting cap in her hand. not the one I told her to buy, and the friend looking confused. Her hair was in no way messed up. They hadn't done anything. My entitled neighbor starts ranting how the cap wasn't working, how it pulls too much hair through, how the hook to pull the hair was stabbing her head, and how I had to do her hair for her right now. She put me on the spot and kept the pressure on until I agreed to foil her hair for her. I just wanted to keep the peace, as she is close to the HOA board members and my next door neighbor. I have seen what she does to people who tick her off, and I didn't want to cause a scene. So I stood there in a considerable amount of pain and foiled her hair and toned it. She was happy, and I thought that was the end of it, so I left. She called me the next day and demanded that I come back and add more highlights because she said it wasn't enough. By now, I was ticked. The first time, I did it to myself by not embarrassing her in front of her friend. This time, she is most definitely taking advantage of me and acting like a brat. I went to her place again to tell her that I would add a few foils, but she needed to keep an eye on the collar and finish it herself. She was not happy with me at all. I again explained how I could barely stand and was having difficulty keeping my balance. She looks me dead in the face and says, "What? Is this about money? I didn't offer to pay you the last time, and now you're mad?" No. It's because you're selfish and don't listen. I can't help you anymore after I finish this." I placed her foils, set the time, and left. She was whining later in the day that her hair was all screwed up in a text. I asked for a picture and an explanation. She stated that she wanted a purple streak in the back at the bottom, so when she pulled her hair up in a ponytail, you would see the purple. Her friend bleached it. After all, it clearly wasn't that hard to do, right? Ha! But they didn't leave it on long enough, and they turned her hair Ronald McDonald orange. I told her, "Sorry, I can barely stand, and I can't keep my balance. Just bleach it again until it turns light yellow. Wash it, towel it, dry it, and then tone it. Good luck." And now she is not speaking to me. I guess I should have led with the nope the first time instead of going over. No good deed goes unpunished, ever. Screw her. I am so tired of this HOA crap. Me and my family have rented the same house for 7 years. We're the first people to ever live in this house, and the neighborhood is brand new. We have these neighbors. We'll call them Joe and Beth. Joe and Beth are absolute jerks. They were nice when we first moved in. Super kind. Brought us baked goods, took me to Bible study. I loved them. But Joe became the president of the HOA and became the biggest pain in the butt possible. 2 neighbors had to leave their house because of them. Joe and Beth live across from us, and a couple years ago, the people that lived right next to us, 2 young parents, their baby, and their brother, used to get along with my family great. The guy that lived there would always joke with us and would hear all of our fights, and instead of calling the cops, he was cool enough to just joke around with us about it. Unfortunately, their brother was unlucky enough to park his car near Joe and Beth's house. Poor dude had no clue. The young couple were renters, so Joe, the butthole, and his jerk wife decided to have his car towed, and war broke out. He asked them why would they do that instead of just telling him to move it, and they just told him to get off of their property and not get near their house. We were friends with both parties, so we got stuck in the middle. But after the car got towed and the attitude they gave to the neighbor's brother, Joe and Beth decided to start a petition to get the couple kicked out. They had a baby, but they didn't care, I guess. Neighbor and his brother started cursing out Joe and Beth whenever they saw them. Joe happened to get into an accident, and when the neighbors saw him, they started roasting the heck out of him and talking about how happy they are cause karma's a bee. So eventually, Joe got enough signatures and got the poor people kicked out of their house. There was another family who was also renting. I don't remember the exact reason. I want to say it's because they were always loud and they had too many cars out front, that Joe and Beth didn't like it. And of course, Joe and Beth got him kicked out of their house. Throughout the years, we had to follow annoying rules. We had to buy a special light for our yard, we had to maintain the greenery on the sidewalks near our house, no cans outside, blah blah blah. Eventually, Joe lost his position as president, and there was no one running the HOA for quite a while. Joe stopped mingling with the neighbors. I guess he went into a depression because he lost the stupid title, but whatever the reason, Joe and Beth became very standoffish and even bigger D-bags than before. They installed this horrible alarm system, so whenever anyone gets near the sidewalk on their property, not even their property, but the road next to the sidewalk, lights go off and first a sound would blare through the neighborhood. "You are being recorded, alarm is being sound." And it would just repeat for a few minutes and you could hear it down the block. I guess they got complaints because they changed it from that chant to a whistle. So you get anywhere near their property and a stupid whistle starts blaring super loud. My dog's potty schedule is pretty late. He has really bad anxiety, so he doesn't like to go out until everyone is in their homes. Whenever we pass the house, the alarm goes off and he starts freaking out, thinking someone is whistling at him, and he runs back in the house. I've had to start putting him in the car and driving him to the next neighborhood to potty. How much anxiety it gives him. There is no grass on their lawn. It's just rocks and a sign that says, "Keep animals off landscape." I don't let my dog crap on anyone's yard, and I don't let him pee on their rocks because I know there's demons always looking for an excuse to bother people. But he does sniff the area. My 14-year-old cousin came over. He's a kid, but he's 6'1", and he looks like a grown man. He went for a walk to talk to his girlfriend at like 12ish or 1 a.m., and because their alarm went off, the neighbors down the street thought someone was breaking into a house, so they called the cops and squad cars pulled up on a 14-year-old kid for taking a walk. Now HOA has been threatening us because our grass won't grow. We bought every seed that exists and it just won't grow. They want us renters to give thousands of dollars to fix the lawn. Crappy Joe and Beth, nosy, miserable people. I took my dog on a walk last night and we passed by their house, and unfortunately before I could stop him, he peed on their rocks. I knew they were going to make an issue about it. So of course, here comes Beth today, knocking on my door, telling me the HOA voted that no one's allowed to let their dogs use the bathroom on anyone's property. I understand not number 2 on their property, no one wants that, but peeing on rocks? I told her my dog never chews on anyone's property, he only made the mistake of peeing on their lawn once, and their alarm scares the heck out of my dog and it causes him to have a nervous breakdown when I'm not even on their property. Told her that the cops were called on my cousin because of her alarm and that I would have to take my dog for exercise. So no, he won't chew, but sorry, he has to walk, and if he pees, I can't stop him and there's no way to clean it. She lied and said she has him on video peeing on her rocks all the time, which I told her he's just sniffing it. It only happened once, but she wouldn't let up. And that no one should be walking around late at night, and she's happy that someone called the cops because a man walking that late, it's very suspicious, and her alarm only goes off when someone's on her property. I tried telling her to watch her videos from her camera because we'll be in the middle of the street, nowhere near the property, and it'll go off. For reference, my father just now pulled in our driveway while I'm typing this, and their alarm went off. Basically, we kept going back and forth that their alarm is a nuisance and people should be allowed to walk without having the cops called on them, while she wouldn't stop lying about "it's only on my property line," until my mother intervened and Beth told me that if I'm going to walk my dog, I need to put a diaper on him to stop him from peeing. I'm going to call the property manager to talk about what kind of nuisance their alarm is, but why the heck are they allowed to tell us what we can and can't do, where we are and aren't allowed to walk, and if we go against the bullcrap rules they voted on, it's not even real laws. We'll get fined or kicked out. Do I have any chance to get that horrible alarm turned off, and what's the best way to go about this? It's one thing to keep our property clean, give the neighbors their respect and the privacy, but to be told their happy cops were called on for a kid walking? I'm not allowed to walk on their sidewalk, and if I'm going to walk my dog, he needs to wear a diaper and isn't allowed to pee. Does California law say that sidewalks are part of the homeowner's property? Because it's just wild to me that walking on a sidewalk could be considered trespassing. How are they allowed to tell me that? Am I the wrong one here? This commenter nails it. Anything from the HOA should be going to the property managers, being that you are renters. Crazy Homeowners Association enforcer gets a taste of her own medicine. I'm house sitting at the moment for my cousin. He and his boyfriend lived in a pretty swanky neighborhood full of McMansions. Nothing too fancy, just your common upper middle class suburban development. Anyhow, over the past few weeks, they've been having a new porch installed on the back of the house. The crew has a trailer parked out front so they can lock up their tools at night. No big deal, right? Apparently, it is. This evening, I get a knock on the door. I'm always wary of solicitors, so I make it a point to look out the window before answering the door. After hearing the doorbell, it takes me a minute to get to the window. As I look outside, I see a woman walking away with 2 little dogs. One of the dogs stops and proceeds to mess on my cousin's lawn. I wait until the dog is done and open the door. By this time, the woman is beginning to walk away, but she sees me and turns around. She introduces herself as a board member of the HOA, or as we know, Homeowners Association. She looks very annoyed. Without even taking a breath, she launches into a lecture about the trailer parked out front, how she's lucky to have walked by and caught this egregious violation of the HOA rules, and how the trailer is an eyesore on the neighborhood. She says she won't report me to the board and suggests a fine if I remove it immediately. I calmly inform her about the patio construction and how the crew needs to store their tools and materials at night, but she's absolutely foaming at the mouth about how tacky it is to have a trailer in front of the house, and again, it's against the rules. So I calmly inform her that I am not the homeowner nor the owner of the trailer. Well, and there isn't much that I can do about it, especially at 6:30 p.m. on a Friday night. Nevertheless, she's adamant that I do something. By this point, I am just fed up with this woman, who obviously has nothing better to do with her evening than bother her neighbors with bullcrap. I look at her and just casually ask, "Hey, just out of curiosity, what's the fine for not picking up after your dog if it messes in someone's lawn?" I tell ya, the look on her face at that point was classic. She stuttered for a minute before telling me that she would have to look into that, and I told her I'd be grateful if she did, because my cousin has been suspecting a neighbor of letting their dog mess in his lawn, so he set up a video camera in the window to catch the culprit. Upon hearing that, she got a little flustered and told me to tell the patio crew to hurry up, and then she walked away with a huff. Harassment about pets, posted by Ken 70. I recently bought a condo, and my partner lives with me, as well as 2 St. Bernards, 4.5 and 7.5 years old, roughly 120 pounds each. During the home search, my realtor made sure to only show me places that did not have weight restrictions. My realtor called my now management company before we put in an offer, and they said there were no restrictions. Before we put in an offer, we read all of the association docs and the bylaws, and there is no pet weight or breed restriction. The only real animal restriction is that you can't own chickens and pigs and stuff like that. When we first moved in a couple months ago, I took one of my dogs for a walk, and I saw that someone outside who introduced herself as the president of the board. My dog was very polite, and he sat there while we talked for a few minutes. She told me that there was a weight limit, and I said, "Hey, my realtor called the HOA and there wasn't one." I meant she called the management company. I didn't realize at the time that the two were different. And she said, "Oh, well, they just want to sell and they don't care." And then told me not to worry and that she's not going to make me get rid of my dog. I was worried for a couple weeks, but nothing came of it. Today, I was walking one of my dogs and left my back gate cracked so you could see inside my apartment just a little bit. Someone walked by and must have spotted my other dog. The person who lives next to me is also a board member, and complained to the board member. Well, I get inside and I settle down from working, and I hear a knock on my door for about a minute. At first, I thought it was someone in the hallway doing something, but then I realized it was actual knocking on my door. I thought it was the neighbor telling me that I accidentally left my gate open, but no, it was the president of the board. She came to essentially berate me and question me about having 2 dogs. She said that she got complaints, and I asked about what, and she said their size. I asked her, "What's the problem? There are no restrictions, and there were none when I bought the place." She then proceeded to tell me that she spent $3,000 to have the rules changed, and there are weight restrictions now, and kept going on and on about me having 2 large dogs and how she didn't know about it, but she should know because she's the president of the building. When I bought this place, I didn't have to disclose what animals I had. I only had to list anyone who was going to be living in the condo. After a few minutes of back and forth, I told her that the complaints were ridiculous because only one time has my dog came across someone in the building, and that was her. My dogs do not use the hallways or go into the main areas. We have a private entrance that we go in and out of. We don't bother anyone. She said that the city we live in has weight restrictions and limits of how many animals you can have in a one-bedroom apartment. The limit is 3, and there are no weight or breed restrictions, just no livestock basically. And I told her it was untrue. She then told me my dogs were too big to live in this apartment and they need to live in a home with a yard. Ma'am, if I could afford a single-family home, I wouldn't be in this apartment. I told her my dogs are fine and they get exercise 3 times a day. Then she told me that there are people in wheelchairs, small children, and so on that could be hurt by my dogs. She said that if my dogs were to attack someone, that they could really get hurt. She said people are afraid of big dogs, and I told her that I'm afraid of little yappy dogs that this apartment is full of, but that's my problem and I deal with it myself. She accused me of buying my second dog after we moved in, knowing there was a weight limit. I have had one of my dogs for 4.5 years and the other since last September. I told her that I could prove when I adopted both of my dogs. All of this went on for about 15 minutes, but then she added that she works from home and never hears them, and she wouldn't force me to remove my dogs. I kept asking her, so what exactly is the problem? And she didn't have an answer, except that she had complaints about their size. She was very aggressive during this conversation and hardly let me get any words out. So what was the point in this interaction? My lawyer sent a letter to the management company asking about this rule change because we need written notice of any board meetings and rule amendments, plus a 67% vote to pass anything. I never received any notice of a board meeting or any rule changes. So my question is, what do I do now? Document everything. Get written statements from your realtor. Look through the CC&Rs again. There has been an announcement, voting, etc. for any changes, and you would have been made aware. You can also get them registered as service or emotional support dogs. It really looks like she is purely buffing though, because it's all nonsense. Getting them registered as service or emotional support dogs is not appropriate here. So who do you agree with? HOA trying to impose fines for something beyond our control, posted by Dishonorable. We live in a community south of Tampa, and our street was built over ore-rich soil. Naturally, the rust oxidizes and bleeds out onto the cement and the paved sidewalks in front of our house, and the whole block, when it rains or when the home sprinkler systems run. I have spent hours with Rusties and a roller to try and combat the rust, and I sent the HOA pictures of improvement. However, they are still trying to impose a Stage 3 violation fine. Every time we correspond with them, they say, we need to speak to management to see if we can remove the violation. I'm just wondering what my next course of action should be. I've considered having a professional from, hopefully somewhere, draft a formal letter to the HOA and to tell them the soil has iron in it and that regardless of the actions taken by the homeowners, it will continue to occur. I also wonder if I and several other residents of this street should contact an attorney. It feels like a simple money grab by the HOA for something uncontrollable. Also be advised that this rust is only at the street and the sidewalk. I believe this is known as the easement, which would constitute a public area. Is that correct? Our driveway itself is completely rust-free. This is not the first time an HOA has done something stupid like this, is it? HOA's A Mansion and the View, posted by Flavius Lasavius. I lived in this town surrounded by magnificent vistas. There was a small development on the outskirts for upscale homes and mansions. Below the development were a few older homes. Many celebrities and business owners had vacation properties in the area, multi-million-dollar houses they used maybe 1 month out of the year. Real estate had always been at a premium. There was one older home among all of these giant view lots. A new buyer was a guy who'd owned a slew of RV dealerships and had obscene amounts of money, so he bought the most prominent lot on the top of the hill as you entered the development of maybe 20 lots. His project was a massive stucco structure with a multi-car garage and a much bigger RV storage space with a huge roll-up garage door. Think of the biggest RVs you've seen, and he had a garage built for it with an automatic door. The house was a nondescript sand color with a red tiled roof, and the entire lot was tastefully landscaped with different kinds of rocks, small mounds here and there, and a few shrubs to be low maintenance. The back of the property was fenced in with an about 8-foot or higher block wall. The fence itself probably cost $100,000. His neighbor was a school teacher who had lived there before the development started and had a modest house. He decided to take advantage of the skyrocketing land prices in the neighborhood and sell, except nobody wanted his crappy house when there were much larger empty lots available. He decided the real issue was that the new behemoth blocked his view, and that's why no one wanted to buy his 3-bedroom ranch house at mansion prices. It was really that his home didn't appeal to the market. So he became the president of the HOA, which included the older homes and the new development. And then the harassment started. The HOA had formed after the RV mansion construction had begun, but the home was so big it took almost a year to finish. The HOA had passed a design theme rule that all houses must be painted in a specific color palette, with the predominant color being a taupe that was darker than this man's standard beige stucco color house. The palette included the taupe and a selection of trim colors in pink, teal, or tan. It was intended to give the community a Santa Fe look and feel, which just so happened to be the color of the president's crappy house. The RV owner took the HOA to court, and the trial dragged on for a year. The guy never used the property, claiming it was still under construction during this time. He lost in court and had to repaint his property using only the design theme approved colors. So the guy brought out his contractor and had him repaint the entire property the Pepto-Bismol pink trim color. Everything was painted this color: the house, the fence, the trim, and the rocks in the yard. Then he had the massive driveway to the garage done in the same pink stamped concrete. Even the garage doors were pink. He locked up the house and never stayed there. The HOA was in an uproar because this house could be seen at the top of the hill for miles. None of the other lot owners broke ground. The president's home didn't sell for 2 years. LIEN post piggybacking on other HOA posts, but with a twist. I'm on my HOA's board of directors. Okay, I'm the president. Shoot me. So our governing documents list any external change that requires an application. Fences, sheds, tree removal, things like that. Oh, and flowers, even annuals. The board didn't write the governing docs. The builder did, but we're still legally obligated to uphold them, no matter how ridiculous we find them. We can change them, but number 1, it's a big expense. Lawyers want dollars for some reason. And 2, we have to get 66% of the homeowners to agree to the change. We can't even get 25 people to a meeting, and we have 230 plus homes. Needless to say, it ain't happening anytime soon. Did I mention the board thinks it's a stupid rule? Unfortunately, we can't just ignore the rule if we don't like it. That can lead to homeowners saying things like selective enforcement and Neighbor Z planted flowers without permission. I don't need permission to build a full-size bird of prey replica in my backyard. So danged if we do, danged if we don't. Unless, in most HOAs, the homeowners can request a variance. If the rule creates an undue hardship, if the homeowner wants to install something in a setback or easement, and so on. The HOA doesn't have to approve it, but the option exists. Cue maniacal cackling. I hatched a plan, an evil plan. I created an online survey where homeowners could request a variance to the application requirement for flowers. Everyone who signed up received a digital waiver request, which was then forwarded to the board. The reasoning for the variance? I believe this restriction is unnecessary and overly burdensome as the exterior of my lot will not change, just the flowers in the flower beds. I agree to submit applications for all other items in the governing documents. I wanted to include something about the builders being poopy heads, but I saved that for a different day. About 40 homeowners requested the waiver and variance, which the board granted en masse. What do we have here? 20% of homeowners who don't have to follow a rule? Guess that makes the rule unenforceable for everyone. Flowers for you and you and you. Please no hate for being on my HOA's board. I realize that HOAs have bad reps for being governed by power-hungry, petty, and noxious Karens, but my board is pretty chill. Just mow your lawn, pay your dues, and bring in your trash cans. This HOA president is fighting for the homeowners. Wow, way to go, man. This entitled Karen tries to get their car out of the tow lot for free. So this story has the entitled man, the man's girl, and a coworker. So this happened a few days ago while I was working security at my local tow lot for my company. This couple came in within minutes of the lobby opening. Karen said, "Hello, can we get some service here?" Even though the lobby just opened, and they walked right up to the help window used by parking enforcement to dispute tickets. So I kindly walk up and tell them, "Hey, I am sorry, but this particular window isn't used by tow lot staff, but window 1 is open." At this point, I get death flared at by the guy, and I simply walk back to my spot to monitor the lobby. The couple go to window 1, and it goes relatively well. I was more paying attention to a pair of teenagers to make sure that they don't do anything when I hear the man yell, "What the heck are you saying? We want our car and you're holding it hostage." At this point, I begin to move close, just in case. "Her car shouldn't have been towed in the first place. She has no tickets." Coworker says, "Sir, the vehicle in question was towed for blocking an alleyway. There was snow on both sides and we weren't blocking crap. I can understand that, sir, but your car wouldn't have been towed if it wasn't blocking the alleyway. Even partially blocking is subject to towing." The girl says, "Honey, let's just get out of here. There's no point arguing." "No, screw that. These jerks stole our car," he says. So I cough to get their attention. "Sir, there are children in the lobby. I'm going to have to ask you to stop swearing and calm down." The entitled man-child Karen turned to me, and he tried, and I just say tried, to intimidate me. What the heck did you just say? Now, let me just put this in here. I personally stand 6 feet 2 inches tall, and this man was around 5'6", and I made sure to train myself so I'm ready for anything. This guy looked ready to snap. So I leaned down to look him in the eye. "I asked you to stop swearing and to keep your voice down. You're not the only one in here this morning." Man-child Karen at least listened for a little bit until they got to the price. Coworker said, "Okay, Mr. Karen, that will be this huge amount of money." Okay. So both the man-child and the man's girl had their eyes wide in disbelief. "Are you kidding me? First you steal my car, now you're telling me that I have to pay?" My coworker, being super chill, nods and adds, "Sir, you do realize this is a tow lot, not a parking lot. Your vehicle, well, it was towed and it was issued a fine. That's the reason for the payment." At this point, the man's girl seemed to give up and turned to leave. "Come on, honey, let's go. We'll pay it when we can." Entitled man-child Karen didn't even look to be happy at all and slammed his hand on the window between him and the coworker. "You're freaking lucky this window's here, jerk. You stole the wrong man's car." By the time his hand hit the window, I was making a beeline to him to escort him out, when this man-child Karen turned and angrily walked off, saying, "I hope you love being on the news, because I'm calling Fox to investigate this place and I'm suing." Since then, I haven't seen any news crew nor lawyers in the lot. At this point, I'm just glad the cops didn't have to get sent to our tow lot again. Oh, that guy was so embarrassed, and he did not handle himself very well at all. What a tough guy, right? What would have you done? HOA story time. Try to sneak a foreclosure, lose my business and everyone else's. For anyone who's ever served on an HOA board, you know that most of the violations, accounting, and general management of an HOA, especially with a neighborhood of the size I run, is handled by a property management company. This is mainly because it would be too expensive and biased to have someone who lives in the community handle all of these duties alone. A dirty little secret of these companies, however, that many of these companies will make their prices cheaper by secretly passing fining policies onto the homeowners that the board has no control over. Hence today's story. So about a month ago, we were conducting a regular HOA meeting. We have been having them fairly often to keep our board, management company rep, and homeowners in sync since I've been hearing complaints of bad behavior from the management company. This particular meeting, however, things almost got out of control. As soon as we finished all of our checklist items, we asked homeowners about any questions. A couple stood up, and I saw the man holding a paper with a shaking hand, which I quickly learned was due to his anger. Over the next 10 minutes, he explained how he was here to plead his case for the board not to foreclose on his house, especially since he had been making payments on a large debt for a very long time. Without going into too many details, the discussion got extremely heated because our management company had told us not to get involved since this homeowner had already been involved with our lawyers. After lots of arguing, the meeting was finally over. I left totally confused because I knew that the homeowner was in good standing, and if he was willing to pay, which the record showed he had called to do so, why couldn't he? I had been told by my property manager to not take any action, and I decided to call BS. I called the legal firm representing the board, which I was told not to do, even though they represent us. And after talking with the firm for an hour, I found out that the management company had not allowed this homeowner to pay his fines and dues because of a petty procedural technicality, and that, instead, they were slapping fines on him like there was no tomorrow. I quickly told the lawyer to offer to settle his balance with no fines, and the issue was resolved the next day. Revenge. I spent more time looking into our management company and found out that they would underbid management contract costs and supplement them by adding in their own fines onto the homeowner collections without the board's approval. This is a technicality in the fining process, and while it's not illegal, it is highly unethical and disputable because it encourages the management company to fine and escalate non-issues since, well, to make more money. I honestly felt horrendous because I had no idea, because it's a one-line clause in the contract. I also received a call from our community manager urging us to stop waiving fines since it sets a bad example. That really sent me over the edge. Livid with this phone call and new knowledge about fines, I found a new management company and terminated our contract immediately. In addition, I believe I found a loophole where all of the charges unfairly pressed against homeowners will not be recouped by the company, and the HOA cannot be liable for them since they are passed through. During the issue with the property investment company, I met about a dozen other HOA board members in my area and discovered about 6 of them are using the same company and even community manager. I urged them to look into the same issues, and they soon discovered the horrors for themselves. It sounds like all of them will be terminating their contracts too. One of the other association presidents actually knows state council for HOA rules, and they are now working with them to make this practice illegal. If it passes, this entire company would go under. While I'm not holding my breath, I am certainly following the legal proceedings closely and have even offered to testify before a committee why this rule is needed. It sounds like deliberations begin in January. As for the community manager, the person helping our community, they have lost over half of their contracts, and their manager came begging for me to stay. They even offered to stop the fining policy in the most corporate talk way possible, while they basically gave themselves plausible deniability if they do it again. I told him that his property manager deserved what she had coming to her, and that their policies were stone cold terrible. He tried to reply, but I just hung up. I was too angry. Watch these management companies closely. They are almost all seriously snakes in the grass, waiting to screw over board members and community members. Do you agree with this? I'm suspecting the community manager is getting a cut of the fines. Would be a good idea to check on any other fines issued. Yeah, there might be some under-the-table nastiness going on here. What would you do? Selling my previous house, demand I bear all the repair and upgrade costs, posted by Snoo Seagulls 4821. Some background story. The previous house was owned by my parents, around 850 feet. They bought it in 2003 and it was previously owned by another owner. My parents spent almost $5,000 for the repair and upgrade of the house. We replaced the floor marble, we repainted the walls, upgraded and repaired the bathrooms, we checked the pipes, we even replaced the main door to a French door style and also upgraded the kitchen. Anyway, back to the story. Recently, my parent bought a new house because they want to be near to their friends and relatives. Because of that, they're selling the previous house and planning to use the money for upgrading the new house. They hired a real estate agent to help with the process and contractors to check if there are any damages or things that need to be repaired or replaced. Last month, a buyer was interested in buying because of the location. It was near her boyfriend's house. She came a few times to inspect the house and even hired a lawyer to be a witness. My parent didn't mind and tried their best to assist. After a week, she was satisfied and agreed to buy the house and went to the bank to get the loan. That's where the problem starts. Let's call her K and the lawyer L. K recently demanded some furniture of the house to be given to her. The furniture she requested is the air conditioning, the fans, television, the closet. Now she insisted because it's made out of wood and marble, and the bed frame for 3 of the bedrooms. She even asked the lawyer to write that down in the contract and stated that my parent willingly gave it to her. My parent doesn't want any confrontation, just agreed except the bed frame and the closet. When she found out, she got more and more demanding, asking for a discount, more furniture, and even asked my parent to pay for the maintenance fee until she moves in, including when she repairs the house. My parent must continue to pay the maintenance fees. My parent's fed up with her and won't sell the house if she keeps up with more demand, and then she quiets down. After the bank loan was approved, the following week she applied for the loan and the money is in. My parents moved out and gave her the keys, so they're temporarily staying with me. This wasn't the end of the story. Last week, she contacted us and demanded my parents pay for the repair cost and upgrade of the house. Like what? My parents couldn't keep up with her, so they asked me to handle her. This is the following conversation. "Where are your parents?" she said. "I need to speak with them about the housing repair." I said, "Miss, did you think you're buying a brand new house? Why would they pay for anything that's under your own?" They lied to me. There are a few damages on the walls, so they must repair and upgrade my house for the inconvenience that they caused. Am I dreaming? Miss, when the contract is signed and the ownership is already transferred, the house and repair and the upgrade is no longer my parents' business. If they don't do what I ask, I'll sue you. Have a good day, miss. After I close the call, she keeps bombarding with messages and threatening to get a lawyer. I actually contacted the lawyer that she hired when my dad became friends with the lawyer, and the lawyer told me that she actually insisted him to add in the extra condition in the contract without my parents' knowledge that they must bear the cost for anything up to 3 years. What? Anyway, now I'm just waiting for the lawyer letter, I guess. An update. Did my parents read the contract? Yes, they even asked the lawyer to read out and explain the terms and conditions in the contract before signing it. The contract is now in the safe. About the altercation of the contract. After signing the contract, the lawyers have to go to the government office to update the new ownership of the house with the original contract as proof. She contacted the lawyer to ask him to edit more terms in the contract after my parents signed the contract. He flat out refused because first, that is illegal, he will lose his license and he'll get sued by my parents and will face criminal charges. When she found out that he will not bend, she is looking for other lawyers that are willing to do it. Anyway, back to the story and update. The real estate agent, which is my dad's old friend, visits my parents and told them that she keeps harassing him in his office about the issue and wants to sue them. She even demands that they compensate for the repair costs for things that my parents didn't know about. Her boyfriend even went to their office and created a scene there. My dad felt so guilty about this matter and couldn't sleep since her harassment started. I couldn't do anything because, by law, she doesn't have proof and there will be no case. The lawyer told my dad and the agent if she did find a lawyer and the letter of demand came, the lawyer asked to be their representative because he is there since the beginning. My dad is now debating about this issue. Overbearing neighbor, posted by Logical Pineapple 624. How do I deal with a neighbor who just trauma dumps and wants to be more than just neighbors? Context. I have lived in my neighborhood for a short amount of time, 3 years to be exact, and as a first-time homeowner, I am extremely cautious about the noise that we make. We recently had a patio installed which caused quite a bit of noise from the contractors. On the final day of the contractors being there, they arrived early, 7:15 a.m., and started grinding rebar, which is quite noisy. I felt terrible for the early wake-up call to all of my neighbors, and I decided to write them a handwritten apology card with a Starbucks gift card as an olive branch. One of my neighbors just moved in, and we haven't introduced ourselves yet, so we took the opportunity to welcome them to the neighborhood in the card, and we gave them our phone numbers in case they needed anything. After delivering each of the cards to their doors, I received a text about an hour later from the new neighbor where she thanked me for the note and the gift card and asked if we could meet each other sometime. I agreed, and we made plans to see each other the next day. Leading up to the meetup, she was texting me constantly, and to maintain a good relationship, I responded in a timely manner. She started to lightly trauma dump, trigger warning, D-violence, about abusive relationships in the past and other items that felt odd to share before even meeting in person or with someone that you barely know. I was sympathetic as I didn't know what to do. Once our meetup happened, she went into much greater detail about her abusive relationships, her vices, and other traumatic events in her life. I was shocked, but I kept my composure and was again sympathetic. She also told me that she was a therapist for families and individuals who struggle with mental health. After the first meetup, she increased how often she was texting me and even stated, "We are the same person and I am going to make you be in my wedding." Mind you, I've known her for a total of 36 hours at this point, the first text to when the text was delivered. Now she texts me every day, multiple times a day, and I've been trying to distance myself a little because, well, 1, it was a lot to process, and 2, because I am caring from 3 other dependents while working full-time, and also, I'm more of a low-maintenance friend to my friends and family, where constant communication, it's not part of my norm. She has noticed me pull back a little and not text back the moment she texts me. She mentioned, hoping she didn't scare me off, multiple times, where I had to tell her, "No, but I'm quite busy, so it's difficult to text, and I like to unwind and unplug after work," hoping that would give a hint that I don't want to text as often or, well, if really at all. Well, that hasn't worked. She has now escalated to asking to borrow items such as a ladder, which of course I let her borrow as she's a first-time homebuyer and probably doesn't have a lot of home tools that she'll need to settle in. My husband and I brought it over and I met her fiance for the first time. The encounter was quite awkward and she stared at me the entire time. They didn't invite us in, which was a relief after the initial encounter, and we walked back home. Within 20 seconds of leaving her driveway, I received 3 texts gushing about me and saying that we should all hang out more. And within 4 minutes, she was in our driveway returning the item. Did she actually need it, or was it just an excuse to see me? I didn't respond for a while, and then she began asking again if she scared us off. She also began asking who my primary care provider, my dentist, and my OBGYN was. Also, every time I go into my backyard, she goes into her backyard. She never says hi, but it's now happening more often that it isn't a coincidence. I am in a bind because I have had bad experiences with overbearing friends in the past who have intentionally tried to ruin aspects of our lives, so I am overly cautious now with the people that I engage with, especially neighbors. I am also violating an HOA rule with having one too many animals at my home. So if she wanted to get back at me, she could by reporting me, so I want to keep myself in somewhat of good graces with all the neighbors. Should I be concerned, or am I being overly cautious? How should I proceed? Oh, given the phone number was the first mistake that opened the Pandora's box can of worms, maybe just back off little bit by little bit and just gray rock, as they say, and don't give her any attention. I hope this gets better, OP. Keep telling me to cut your tree down? Good luck cleaning it up. Posted by Silver Scallion 1127. My neighbors have a fairly big tree and have branches hanging over our yard. I know I can't really say anything about it, so I annoyingly collect dead leaves and branches that often fall into my yard. So I had enough, and I bought a pole saw and sawed off a few until my neighbors excitingly ran up to me and said I can saw the whole tree off so it won't ever grow back. I blankly looked at him, hoping that he would at least offer money or something, but I basically said that I'm only sawing off what's on my side of the property. He kept trying to convince me that I would never have to worry about branches if I cut off his whole tree. I kept saying no. He shut up for maybe an hour and then offered me a few skewers that he happened to barbecue. This was literally our first time interacting, so it was pretty insulting how much he's sucking up. I declined his food and he got a bit hissy. I saw that there was a lot more branches left for me to saw off, so I thought even more. It actually might be a great idea to saw their whole 20-foot tree. So I gladly went up to the neighbor and then I said, "You know what? I thought about what you said. I think it's better off I cut down the tree so I don't have to deal with it." Even while taking the skewer he offered me earlier. His smile became bright again as I walked myself around the fence and went to town. Tree timbered down, and I went to the neighbor and said, "All right, glad to help. Have to go back to my yard to clean up." He became hesitant and said, "When can you clean my yard up?" "Clean your yard? You only told me to cut down your tree. This isn't my yard. I'm not cleaning this up." He instantly got so red, and I could tell it's taking him a long while for him to process what now that he has to deal with. I took my saw back and even told him it's a rental and I have to return it soon. I decided to make this post because this past year it was left in his yard and wasn't touched. He just hired someone to simply get rid of it. Hasn't spoken to me since and had to say his skewer tasted really good. That's some great malicious compliance, OP. You just did what the man said and he had to deal with the fallout, literal tree fallout and consequences. Neighbor threatened my family. Next step? Posted by GuitarBoy33. Neighbor moved next door in my formerly quiet cul-de-sac a year ago. Their once nice house is now a yard full of trash, and they park their cars in front of my house. They block my driveway. They drag their trash cans all the way over to in front of my house. They put their trash in my cans, and so on. I go out at least once a day and throw trash and other items back into their yard from mine. I've missed multiple days of mail because they park in front of my mailbox. So today, their trash was back over in front of my house, blocking my mailbox, and I dragged it back to in front of their own home. The very large father and neighbor came over and banged on our door. My adult daughter answered, and he shouted that he was going to beat her freaking butt. Her husband, my son-in-law, came out and was also threatened. He told us never to touch his cans again, and he can put them anywhere he wants in the cul-de-sac because it's public property. So I heard about this maybe 15 minutes later and went next door and asked if he threatened my daughter. He said he did and then proceeded to threaten to kick my butt. So I called the police. They came out and basically took a quick report and they left without arresting him or doing anything. They basically told me that I can file a protective order if I want and that I should just stay out of his way. I have a 10-year-old granddaughter and a 1-year-old grandson living with me. I can't just allow this threat to my family. So the officer didn't even give me his name so I can file a protective order. What are my next steps? Just wait for the police report to be ready and to get his info from there and file a report? Get a gun? I feel like my family could be harmed every time they come and go from the house. I was very disappointed the police didn't seem to care or want to help. Comments are suggesting cameras and then to call the police station and ask for a copy of the report and it might have his name on it. Good idea. Overreacting, posted by Patient Leopard 2704. We moved into our house about 16 months ago. 3 months after we moved in, we had our first baby. Our neighbor's property is very close to our son's nursery and they have a pool. We quickly learned in the summer that they had frequent parties with grandkids, lots of screaming and so on, which we could live with. All was fine until about 2 months later, they bought an enormous RV that sits directly next to our property line. When they have it extended, it's literally in our front yard. So much so that we can't cut the grass unless they put the extension in, and even then it's still a challenge. When they bought it, they immediately came over to apologize and stated it wouldn't be extended unless their grandchildren were over. He also said that he would take care of the grass. Neither turned out to be true. It was always extended and he frequently would wait weeks to take care of the lawn. We had a brand new baby, so it really wasn't a priority of ours. Fast forward to this year. All was fine until RV shows up last month. Same song and dance as last year. Have to ask him to move the extension to cut our lawn. frequent and late pool parties with kids screaming. Now that our son is 1, noise is more of a concern, especially at 9 and 10 o'clock at night. Additionally, he was doing work on his shed and left a bunch of debris in our yard that we cleaned up. Guests always park in front of our house, and when we take walks, they obstruct their driveway so that we have to go on the street. Last night, they had another party, and when we got home, there were a total of 12 cars on the street. They were all in front of our house, and we couldn't even back into our driveway. The RV extended into our yard. It was excessive. The cars were only in front of our house, not the opposite neighbor. While they have told us before, we are good neighbors, and we try to be quiet for your baby, it just seems inconsiderate, especially having to ask your neighbor to move their crap so you can mow your own lawn. A crazy Karen followed me home, posted by Volpix2317. For some context, I was a 22-year-old female, though I do have a baby face and could pass for 16 or 17 years old easy. I had a Yamaha motorbike, 125 cc's, meaning it could easily go 70 miles per hour. My dad raced motocross, and I've been riding bikes my whole life. He taught me all the road rules and the safety do's and don'ts. So one day, I'm riding to visit my uncle who lived in the middle of nowhere, and the roads there are all 50 miles per hour, and they have extreme bends, and on each side of the road is a massive ditch. I'm going 55 miles per hour, only slowing when the bends are bad. Cue a Karen with 3 kids, all under 10, in the back tailing me, and I mean tailing, within a couple of feet to the back of my bike. So I speed up to ignore her, and then she pulls her minivan to the side of me and tries to force me to the edge of the road, which is just a ditch. I slow and I let her pass, my heart racing as I barely kept my bike upright. You'd think this is where it ends, right? No. I was maybe a few miles from my uncle's at this point, and I have to go through a village high street to get there. As I'm going through, I see Karen, and her minivan is blocking the street, and she stood with her door open in the road, her arms out as she tries to stop me and force me off of the road. I just managed to get past her as onlookers were yelling at her to stop. I go to the last few streets to my uncle's and stop down the road, parking my bike and taking my helmet off. With a screech, Karen's minivan pulls up in front of me and she runs for me screaming. What the heck is wrong with you? Don't you know how to drive? When I just stare at her, she screeches again. Only cars can drive in the road, bikes have to drive on the side or on the pavement. Yeah, no, that's so wrong. That thing can't go fast enough to be in the road. You should have pulled over when I told you to. I'm gonna report you. At this point, I see my uncle coming outside, his eyes shifting between the Karen and me. Now, something to know about my uncle and me is that we are crazy close. We're both pranksters too. Also, my uncle is 6 foot and not a small man. So without skipping a beat, I put on a fake sad face and run to him screaming in a terrified voice. Daddy, this lady tried to grab me off of my bike and followed me home. Where I live, you can get a provisional license before 18, meaning that I could have been a minor. Trying not to laugh, my uncle puffs up his chest and yells out at the woman who had run after me and is now behind us. You followed my little girl home. She's a child. Karen's face went white, and I swear she looked like she had crapped herself as she tried to defend herself, only for my uncle to interrupt her. As loud as he could, making sure every nosy neighbor had come out, he screams, "What are you, some kind of perv? I'm calling the police." Without blinking, Karen runs for her car, speeding off with 3 confused-looking kids in the back. As soon as Karen was out of view, I told my uncle what happened, and we both laughed as we went inside to see my aunt laughing as she had watched the whole thing through the window. Update. Okay, so just for clarification, I didn't have a camera as this was years ago when they cost a lot more than they do now. And yes, I could have pulled over and called the police, but I was on my bike and my phone in my backpack, so I would have had to stop, get my bag off, and grab it. And if you've used bike gloves, you know it's not possible to use a phone with them. I had no intention of stopping, spending all that time and giving her the opportunity to run for me. As for the police afterwards, I was just happy she had screwed off. Weird neighbor aggressively stomping above me in the middle of the night, posted by Shade Coldfang. So I just had the weirdest thing happen to me. I live in an old building made in the 1800s, and so the flooring and the walls, they're all weird, and on some parts more than just thick, and on some parts like paper thin. So anyways, my window was open in the middle of the night, and I was about to go to bed, cause it's summer and it's hot, so I was just letting some fresh night air in. My window in my bedroom goes into my backyard, but there is also a way that people used to exit the property. When I was laying down in bed, my female neighbor upstairs stood next to my open window and just said quietly, "Hello," into my room from the outside. Weirded out by this, I just made a grunting and cough noise to make myself known that I am in here. She left my window, and about a minute later, out of frickin' nowhere, she started getting mental upstairs and started banging on the walls, jumping like a maniac and stomping hard on the floor at 11 p.m. in the night out of nowhere. I was starting to get mad because I wanted to sleep. And then it wouldn't stop. I tossed over a jacket and walked outside. Her windows were open and I was staring up into the windows, waiting for her to make more noise so I have a reason to yell up there and threaten with the cops, because this was way over the top what she did, and it's against the building rules made by our landlord to make this much noise beyond 9 p.m. So as I was standing there in the dark backyard, it got suddenly very quiet in her home. So I was getting back into my apartment, still like, what the heck just happened? Why did she go outside into the backyard, quietly say hello into my open window, just to go away and get mental above me? Sometimes I just wish I could see into people's heads to know why they do this. This comment says mental illness, and OP replies, might be, but I can't say for sure. She was always fairly quiet, no loud noises or anything strange like what had just happened. Of course, sometimes some bumping and stomping happens through the day, but not as loud and not as aggressive, like just walking or running or dropping some stuff or cleaning. All in all, what just happened is truly strange, and I am living here in my apartment for 8+ years, and stuff like this has never happened before. Sued the HOA president. He keeps finding me, so I ruin his HOA. Click the video on your screen so you get this awesome story, and I'll see you there.